I, 28F, stood beside my new husband, Mark, my hand in his. The reception hall was beautiful. Everything was perfect, exactly as my mother had planned. She had overseen every detail, from the flowers to the font on the napkins. She beamed from the head table, accepting compliments as if she were the one who had just gotten married. I did not mind. I was just happy. The day was supposed to be about love and family, and for a few hours it actually felt that way. My father, Robert, looked proud, if a little overwhelmed. My grandfather, Arthur, sat quietly at his table, watching everything with his sharp old eyes. He had been quiet all day, which was unusual for him. Then came the toasts. My father gave a sweet, rambling speech. Mark's best man told a few embarrassing stories. My maid of honor, my best friend since childhood, made me cry with her heartfelt words. Everything was going smoothly. Too smoothly. I should have known better. In my family, peace is just the quiet before the storm. My mother, Eleanor, stood up, clinking her glass for attention she already commanded. She gave a flawless speech about the daughter she had raised, the perfect life she had provided, and the wonderful man I was marrying. It was more about her than me, but that was expected. I smiled and nodded through it all. I just wanted the day to be over so Mark and I could leave for our honeymoon and be normal for 2 weeks. As my mother sat down to a round of polite applause, a different sound cut through the room. It was the scrape of a chair and the sharp tap of a spoon against a water glass. Everyone turned. My grandfather, Arthur, was on his feet. He was 87, frail but with a fire in his eyes that had never dimmed. "I have something to say," he announced, his voice surprisingly strong. It carried across the hall, silencing the murmurs. My mother's smile tightened. My father looked nervous, shifting in his seat. "Dad, maybe you should sit down," my mother said, her voice a low warning. "We have a schedule to keep." Grandpa Arthur ignored her completely. He looked around the room, making eye contact with family members, his old friends, and then his gaze settled on me. There was a deep sadness in his eyes that I had never seen before. "A wedding is about truth," he said, his voice ringing with conviction. "It is about 2 people starting a life with no secrets." A nervous ripple went through the guests. This was not the kind of toast anyone was expecting. Mark squeezed my hand, a silent question in his touch. I gave a tiny shake of my head, just as confused as he was. "But this family," Grandpa Arthur continued, his voice rising, "is built on a secret. A deep, dark, rotten secret that has poisoned us for 30 years. My mother stood up again, her face a mask of fury. "That is enough, Dad. You are embarrassing yourself. You are confused." "I am not confused, Eleanor." He snapped back, and the use of her full name was like a slap. He never called her Eleanor unless he was truly angry. "I have been silent for too long. I kept silent for the sake of peace. But I will not watch my granddaughter start her life on a foundation of lies." My heart started pounding. What was he talking about? What secret? My father was trying to get up to go to him, but he seemed frozen in his chair. "This family has a secret," Grandpa Arthur repeated, his voice shaking with emotion. He raised a trembling hand, his finger extending out. He did not point at a cousin who had a gambling problem or an uncle with a hidden past. He pointed right at the head table. He pointed right at my mother. The entire room followed his gesture. 200 pairs of eyes landed on my mother, whose perfect smile had dissolved into a snarl of pure rage. The air crackled with tension. The silence was absolute. My perfect wedding day had just become a public spectacle. In that moment, I did not feel embarrassment. I felt a cold dread. I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that whatever he was about to say would change everything. My life, as I knew it, was over. The lie I had been living, even without knowing it, was about to be revealed. And it all started here, with my grandfather's trembling finger pointed directly at my mother's heart. The silence in the room was a physical thing. It pressed in on me, making it hard to breathe. My mother, Eleanor, stared at my grandfather, her eyes wide with a mixture of fury and panic. My father, Robert, finally managed to get to his feet. He rushed toward his father-in-law, his hands out in a placating gesture. "Arthur, please," my father said, his voice a desperate whisper that still seemed to echo in the dead quiet. "This is not the time or the place." "It is exactly the time and the place," Grandpa Arthur retorted, his gaze never leaving my mother. 30 years I have held my tongue. 30 years I have watched her. I will not be silent anymore. My mother found her voice. It was sharp and brittle. "He is not well," she announced to the room, forcing a thin, pitying smile. "My father, as many of you know, has moments of confusion. He does not know what he is saying." Some of the guests nodded sympathetically. Others just stared, their expressions ranging from shock to morbid curiosity. My own mind was racing. Confusion? My grandfather had never been confused a day in his life. He was sharp, sometimes cantankerous, but his memory was a steel trap. "I know exactly what I am saying, Eleanor," Grandpa said, his voice low and dangerous. "I am saying you are a thief and a liar." Gasps rippled through the hall. Mark's arm came around my shoulders, a protective gesture. I felt like I was watching a play, a terrible drama unfolding that I had no part in, yet I was at its center. "Security!" my mother hissed to the wedding planner, who was hovering nearby, looking horrified. "Get him out of here, now!" Two men in suits began to move toward my grandfather's table. But my Aunt Carol, my mother's younger sister, stood up. She placed a hand on Grandpa Arthur's arm. "Let him speak," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "Carol, sit down," my mother commanded. "Do not make this worse." But Carol did not sit down. She looked at my mother with an expression I had never seen on her face before. It was not her usual gentle sadness. It was a flicker of defiance. The security guards hesitated, unsure of what to do in this bizarre family standoff. Grandpa Arthur took a deep breath. "She stole from her own sister?" he declared, his voice booming again. "She stole her inheritance. She stole her mother's dying wishes. She built this life, this perfect, pristine life, on a bed of lies she told to a dying woman." The accusation hung in the air, heavy and unbelievable. I looked from my grandfather's face, etched with pain and conviction, to my mother's, which was now pale with rage. I looked at my Aunt Carol, who had tears streaming down her face but was nodding slowly, a silent confirmation. I looked at my father, who was just standing there, looking utterly defeated, his eyes fixed on the floor. He was not denying it. He was not defending his wife. That was the moment I knew. That was the moment the floor fell out from under me. It was not just an old man's rambling. It was the truth. My mother let out a sound, a choked sob of outrage. "How dare you?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "How dare you ruin your own granddaughter's wedding with these senile fantasies?" She turned and fled. She did not walk. She ran from the room, her perfect hair and expensive dress a blur of motion. The spell was broken. The room erupted in a cacophony of whispers. My father followed her, casting a helpless, apologetic look back at me. Mark turned to me. "Clara, are you okay?" he asked, his voice full of concern. I could not answer. I just stood there, my bouquet of white roses feeling impossibly heavy in my hands. The perfect day, the perfect life my mother had so carefully constructed, had just been shattered by a few sentences. And deep down, in a place I had not known existed, a small, cold part of me was glad. The secret was out. Now, I just had to figure out what it was. The rest of the wedding reception was a blur. My maid of honor and Mark's best man did their best to salvage the evening, encouraging people to dance and eat, but the atmosphere was ruined. A thick cloud of awkwardness and hushed gossip hung over the room. Half the guests left within the hour, offering mumbled apologies and sympathetic looks that made my skin crawl. My family was a mess. Aunt Carol had taken Grandpa Arthur home, both of them looking exhausted and emotionally drained. My father and mother had disappeared and were not answering their phones. Mark and I ended up leaving our own reception early. We just walked out, leaving the confused DJ playing upbeat music to a nearly empty dance floor. The drive to our hotel was silent. Mark kept reaching over to take my hand, his touch a steady anchor in the swirling chaos of my thoughts. I did not know what to say. What could I say? Sorry my family is a walking soap opera? Sorry my grandfather just publicly accused my mother of being a thief? When we finally got to our hotel room, the one with the champagne on ice and rose petals on the bed, the absurdity of it all hit me. I started to laugh. It was not a happy sound. It was a broken, hysterical laugh that quickly turned into sobs. Mark just held me, letting me cry it out on his shoulder, his new suit jacket getting soaked with my tears. I am so sorry, Mark. I finally managed to say, my voice thick with tears. You have nothing to be sorry for, he said, his voice firm. This is not your fault. We are a team, remember? Whatever this is, we will figure it out together. His words were a comfort, but they could not quiet the storm in my head. A thief. A liar. He had called my mother a thief and a liar. And my aunt and father had not denied it. The thought kept replaying in my mind. My mother, Eleanor, was the pillar of our family. She was a perfectionist, controlling, and often difficult, but I had never thought of her as malicious. I had always just assumed she wanted what was best for us, even if her methods were overbearing. But what if that entire persona was a lie? The next morning, we were supposed to fly to Hawaii for our honeymoon. I woke up with a pounding headache and a sense of dread. We do not have to go, Mark said, seeing the look on my face. We can postpone it. We can stay here and sort this out. No, I said, my voice more resolute than I felt. We are going. I am not letting her ruin this too. Whatever this is, it can wait 2 weeks. I was lying to myself. I knew it could not wait, but I needed to escape. I needed to put an ocean between me and my family's implosion. So we went. We flew to paradise, but I could not relax. Every time I looked at the beautiful blue water, I saw my grandfather's angry face. Every time I felt the warm sun on my skin, I felt the chill of that silent, accusatory room. I spent most of our honeymoon on the phone, trying to get answers. My mother was not speaking to me, or rather, she was screening my calls. I left message after message, my initial confusion turning into frustration and then anger. Mom, please call me. We need to talk about this. What is going on? No reply. I called my father. He answered, his voice weary. Clara, honey, just try to enjoy your honeymoon, he said, his tone pleading. How can I enjoy my honeymoon when my family just fell apart at my wedding? I asked, my voice sharp. Dad, what did Grandpa mean? Is it true? There was a long pause on the other end of the line. It is complicated, he finally said. Your grandfather, he is old. He gets things mixed up. He did not look mixed up, I shot back. And Aunt Carol did not seem to think he was mixed up. And you did not defend Mom. You just stood there. What was I supposed to do? He asked, his voice cracking. Clara, please, let it rest. It is old family history. It has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with me, I said, my voice rising. This is my family. My mother, my grandfather. If she did what he said she did, I need to know. Your mother loves you, he said, a weak, pathetic defense. She just wanted to give you a perfect wedding. And she did, I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. It was perfect right up until the moment our entire family's dirty laundry was aired out for 200 guests. He sighed again, a sound of pure exhaustion. I cannot talk about this right now, Clara. Your mother is... She is not doing well. Just come home and we can talk then. He hung up before I could say another word. I felt a surge of fury. He was protecting her. He was enabling her just like he always did. My whole life, he had been the peacemaker, the one who smoothed things over after my mother's latest demand or emotional outburst. But this was different. This was not about her being difficult. This was about her being a criminal. Next, I called Aunt Carol. She answered on the first ring. "Clara, honey, are you okay?" she asked, her voice full of genuine concern. "No, I am not okay," I said bluntly. "Aunt Carol, you have to tell me what is going on. What was Grandpa talking about?" She was quiet for a moment. I could hear her take a shaky breath. I think you should talk to your grandfather," she said evasively. "I tried," I said, exasperated. "You took him home and now Dad says he is confused and Mom says he is senile. I need to hear it from you. Were you there? When Grandma died? What happened with the will?" "Oh, Clara," she whispered, and I could hear the tears in her voice. "It was a long time ago." "It does not matter how long ago it was," I insisted. "It matters if it is true. Did my mother steal your inheritance?" There was another long, painful silence. I could hear her struggling with herself. The years of forced peace warring with the sudden, explosive truth. "Yes," she finally said, the word so quiet I almost missed it. "Yes, she did." The confirmation hit me like a punch to the gut. It was one thing to hear the accusation from my grandfather in a moment of high drama. It was another to hear it confirmed so plainly by the victim herself, my own mother, a thief. The word echoed in my mind, ugly and undeniable. "What happened?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. I cannot do this over the phone," Carol said, her voice breaking. "When you get back, come see me. We will talk. Just be careful, Clara. Your mother, she will not let this go easily. She will try to turn you against me, against your grandfather. She will lie. She is very, very good at lying." The warning sent another chill down my spine. I had seen my mother manipulate situations before, twisting words and playing the victim to get her way. But I had always seen it as a personality flaw, a part of her difficult nature. I had never considered that it could be something so much darker, so much more deliberate. The rest of the honeymoon was a tense, distracted affair. Mark was incredible, patient, and supportive, but my mind was 1,000 miles away. Back home, sifting through memories, looking for clues I had missed. I started to see my childhood in a new light. The way my mother always favored me over my cousins, Carol's children. The way she always had to have the best of everything, the biggest house, the newest car. The way she would talk about Aunt Carol with a kind of pitying condescension, as if Carol's more modest life was a result of her own poor choices, not circumstances. I remembered arguments, hushed and angry, between my mother and grandfather over the years. I had always tuned them out, assuming they were just about his stubbornness or her controlling nature. But now I wondered what they were really about. Was he trying to get her to confess all along? Was this wedding blow-up the culmination of decades of suppressed anger? When we finally flew home, I did not feel rested or refreshed. I felt like a soldier returning to a war zone. I knew that the moment I stepped off that plane, the fight would begin. The fight for the truth. And I had a terrible feeling that in this war, there would be no winners, only casualties. My family was already the first one. The moment we landed, the pressure was on. My phone buzzed with a text from my father. "Your mother wants to have dinner. Just the four of us. Tonight." It was not a question. It was a summons. "I am not ready for this," I told Mark as we waited for our luggage. "I know," he said, putting his arm around me. "But you cannot avoid it forever. Maybe it is better to get it over with." He was right. I texted my dad back. "Okay, what time?" The dinner was at my parents' house, the house I grew up in. It was a large, beautiful home in the best part of town, always impeccably decorated, a testament to my mother's perfect taste. Tonight, it felt like a stage set for a drama. When we walked in, my mother, Eleanor, was waiting in the foyer. She was dressed perfectly, her makeup flawless. She looked like the victim of a great injustice, her expression a carefully crafted blend of sorrow and wounded pride. She rushed to me, her arms open. "Oh, my darling," she said, her voice trembling. "I am so, so sorry your wedding was ruined. I cannot believe my own father would do something so cruel." She hugged me tightly. It felt like being embraced by a statue. I did not hug her back. I just stood there, stiff and unresponsive. When she pulled away, she looked hurt. "Clara?" she said, her voice full of manufactured pain. "I think we need to talk, Mom," I said, my voice flat. My father, Robert, hovered in the background, looking miserable. "Let us go into the dining room," he said, trying to sound cheerful. "Dinner is almost ready." The meal was excruciating. My mother kept up a stream of bright, meaningless chatter about our honeymoon, about her friends, about anything other than the giant, gaping wound in the middle of our family. I gave one-word answers. Mark tried to be polite, but even he could not sustain a conversation in the face of my stony silence. Finally, my mother put her fork down with a clatter. "All right, I cannot take this anymore," she said, her voice sharp. "Clara, what is wrong? Why are you treating me like this? I am the one who was publicly humiliated." "Were you?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "Or were you publicly exposed?" Her eyes flashed with anger. "How can you take his side?" she demanded. "He is a confused old man who is losing his mind. He has always resented my success. He and Carol, they have always been jealous." "Is that what this is about?" I pressed. "Jealousy? Or is it about a will? Is it about Grandma's house?" My father flinched. "Clara, do not," he warned. "No, I want to hear this," my mother said, leaning forward. "Go on, Clara. Tell me what my sister has been filling your head with." "I have not talked to her yet," I said, which was only a partial lie. I had not gotten the full story. "I am asking you, what happened when Grandma died?" "Your grandmother, in her final days, had a moment of clarity," my mother said, her voice taking on a righteous tone. "She realized who her truly devoted daughter was. She knew I was the one who would be a proper steward of the family legacy. Carol was flighty, irresponsible. Your grandmother knew that. She changed her will to reflect her wishes. It is as simple as that." Her story was smooth, practiced. She had probably been telling it to herself for 30 years. "So, Grandpa is lying?" I asked. "He just invented this whole story about you stealing from Aunt Carol?" "He is rewriting history to suit his own narrative," she said dismissively. "He always favored Carol. He never approved of your father, of the life I built. This is his way of getting back at me. It is pathetic, and it is cruel." She was so convincing. For a split second, I almost believed her. The mother I had known my whole life, the strong, capable woman who always had everything under control, was looking at me with hurt in her eyes. But then I remembered the look on Aunt Carol's face at the wedding. The tears. The quiet nod. And I remembered my father's defeated silence. "And Dad?" I asked, turning to him. "Do you think Grandpa is a liar?" My father stared down at his plate. He looked old and tired. "Your mother is right," he mumbled, not looking at me. "It was a long time ago. The will was legal. Everything was settled." "That is not what I asked," I said, my voice rising. "I asked if you think Grandpa is a liar." He would not meet my eyes. "It is a complicated family matter," he stammered. I pushed my chair back and stood up. "I cannot do this," I said, my voice shaking with anger and disappointment. "You are both lying to me. I do not know what the truth is yet, but I know you are not telling it." "Clara, sit down," my mother commanded, her voice turning hard. "You are being hysterical." "No," I said, standing my ground. "I am done being the good daughter who just smiles and nods. I am going to find out what really happened. And I am going to do it without your lies and your manipulation. I turned and walked out of the dining room. Mark was right behind me. Where are you going? My mother called after me, her voice a shriek of fury. You are walking out on your own, mother? I am going to find my family, I called back over my shoulder, the part of it that still knows how to tell the truth. As we walked out the front door into the cool night air, I felt a strange sense of liberation. The perfect family I had thought I belonged to was a sham. The perfect mother I had tried so hard to please was a stranger. It was terrifying, but it was also freeing. I no longer had to play a part in their perfect play. I could finally find out who I really was and who they really were. My next stop was Aunt Carol's house. The truth was waiting there, and I was ready to hear it, no matter how ugly it was. Aunt Carol lived in a small, cozy house on the other side of town. It was the kind of home that felt lived in and loved, a stark contrast to the museum-like perfection of my parents' house. When she opened the door, she looked like she had aged 10 years since the wedding. There were dark circles under her eyes, but her expression was one of relief when she saw me. I was hoping you would come, she said, ushering me and Mark inside. We sat in her comfortable living room, filled with books and mismatched furniture. She made us tea, her hands trembling slightly. I am sorry to put you in this position, I began, but I need to know everything. She took a deep breath and nodded. I know. I should have told you years ago. I did not want to destroy your relationship with your mother, and I was afraid. Afraid of what? I asked. Of her, Carol said simply. Eleanor, when she wants something, she is relentless. She can be incredibly cruel. After Mom died, she made my life a living hell. She cut me off from family friends, spread rumors about me. She made sure everyone saw me as the bitter, jealous sister. After a while, it was just easier to be quiet, to let her have her victory. My heart ached for her. I could see the years of pain and resentment she had carried in silence. Tell me what happened, I urged gently, with Grandma. Carol's eyes filled with tears. Mom was sick for a long time, she began, her voice soft and full of sorrow. Towards the end, she was weak, often confused. Eleanor moved into the house to take care of her. I thought it was a wonderful gesture at the time. I was working full-time, I had 2 young kids. I was grateful for the help. She paused, taking a sip of her tea. I would visit every day after work, but every time I came, Eleanor would have a story. Mom is sleeping, she would say, or she had a bad day, she does not want to see anyone. She started isolating her from me. She told Mom that I was too busy with my own life, that I did not care about her anymore. She would intercept my letters, my phone calls. She told me Mom was getting paranoid and did not want me around. I felt sick to my stomach. This was not just manipulation, it was elder abuse. And the will? I asked. Our whole lives, Mom and Dad had told us that everything would be split equally between us, Carol said. The house, their savings, everything. It was about fairness. That was so important to them. The original will reflected that. We both saw it. We both had copies. So what changed? A week before Mom died, Carol said, her voice dropping to a whisper. Eleanor had her lawyer come to the house. She had a new will drawn up. I did not know about it until after the funeral. At the reading, this new will was presented. It left everything, the entire estate, to Eleanor. I was left with a token amount, enough to not legally contest it as a complete disinheritance. And Grandma just signed it? I asked, incredulous. Her signature was on it, Carol said, wiping a tear from her cheek. But she was so sick, Clara. She was on heavy medication. I do not believe for a second she knew what she was signing. I think Eleanor told her it was a medical form or something else. She took advantage of a sick, dying woman, her own mother. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. It was so much worse than I had imagined. Why did no one do anything? I asked, my voice shaking with anger. Why did Grandpa let this happen? He tried, Carol said sadly. Oh, he tried. He fought with Eleanor for months. He wanted to take her to court. But Eleanor was clever. She had a doctor, a friend of hers, who testified that Mom was of sound mind. She had the lawyer who said Mom was clear and decisive. She threatened to countersue your grandfather for slander, to drag the family name through the mud. Your father begged him to drop it. Robert, he has never been able to stand up to her. He just wanted peace at any cost. So, eventually your grandfather gave up. But he never forgave her. He just waited. Waited for what? I asked. For a moment when he could no longer stand the silence. Carol said. Your wedding. Seeing Eleanor up there, playing the part of the perfect mother, the matriarch of this perfect family she built on a lie. I think it was just too much for him. He finally snapped. We sat in silence for a long time, the weight of her story filling the room. It all made sense now. The strained family gatherings, the resentment in my grandfather's eyes, my father's constant anxiety, my aunt's quiet sadness. It was all rooted in this one monstrous act of betrayal. Is there any proof? I asked finally. Anything left from back then? Carol shook her head sadly. Eleanor was thorough. She got rid of the old will. She controlled all of Mom's papers after she died. There is nothing left but our word against hers. And she has spent 30 years making sure her word is the only one that matters. I felt a surge of despair. So this was it. My mother would get away with it. She would paint Grandpa as senile, Aunt Carol as jealous, and me as a disloyal daughter. She would win, just like she always did. But then I thought of something. A memory, faint and distant. I was a little girl, maybe 7 or 8, playing hide and seek in my grandparents' old house, the one my parents now lived in. I had hidden in my grandmother's reading room, a small study off the main living area. I had stumbled on a loose floorboard under the big rug. Curious, I had lifted it. And underneath, in the dark, dusty space, I had seen a metal box. I had been too scared to open it, and I had forgotten about it until this very moment. The reading room, I said aloud. Carol looked at me, confused. What about it? In Grandma's old reading room, I said, my heart starting to beat faster. Is there a loose floorboard? Under the rug? Carol's eyes widened. The North Star, she whispered. What? I asked. Your grandmother. She loved astronomy, Carol explained, a flicker of excitement in her voice. The rug in that room has a big compass rose woven into it. She used to call the spot under the northern point the North Star. She used to say, if you ever need to find your way, look to the North Star. It was a long shot, a wild, desperate hope, but it was the only thing I had. I have to get into that house, I said, my voice filled with a new determination. I have to see what is in that box. Getting into my parents' house alone was not going to be easy. My mother was on high alert. She had been bombarding me with texts and voicemails, alternating between furious accusations and tearful pleas for reconciliation. I ignored them all. I needed a plan. Mark and I talked it over late into the night. You cannot just break in, he said, always the voice of reason. We need an excuse, a reason for you to be there when they are not. We came up with a simple plan. I would call my father. I would tell him I had left a sentimental piece of jewelry, a gift from my late grandmother, in my old bedroom, and that I needed to pick it up before we left for a second honeymoon trip we had just booked. It was a lie, but a plausible one. I would appeal to his sentimentality, his desire to fix things. I called him the next morning. He sounded relieved to hear from me. Clara, thank God, he said. Your mother is beside herself. We need to fix this. I know, Dad, I said, forcing a softer, more conciliatory tone. I think I overreacted. It was just a lot to take in. Look, Mark and I are going to go away for a few days to clear our heads, but I think I left Grandma's old locket and my jewelry box in my old room. It is really important to me. Would it be okay if I stopped by this afternoon to get it? I do not want to see Mom right now. I am not ready. Could you just make sure she is out? I could hear the hope in his voice. This was what he wanted. A small step toward normalcy. A problem he could solve. Of course, honey, he said immediately. She has a bridge game at 2. The house will be empty. I will leave the spare key under the mat for you. Just call me after, okay? Let me know you are all right. I will, Dad. Thank you, I said, feeling a pang of guilt for deceiving him, but it was a necessary evil. That afternoon, I drove to my parents' house alone. Mark had offered to come, but I knew I had to do this myself. The house looked the same as it always had, beautiful and imposing. It felt strange to be using a hidden key to enter my own childhood home, like I was a burglar. The house was silent and still. I walked straight to the small reading room. The big, ornate rug with the compass rose was still there. My hands were shaking as I rolled back the heavy corner. The floorboards were old, dark wood. I ran my fingers over them, searching for the loose one. I found it. It moved slightly under my touch. My heart was pounding in my chest. Using my fingernails, I pried the board up. It came away with a soft groan of old wood. And there, in the dark, dusty space beneath, was a small metal box. It was old and slightly rusted at the hinges. I lifted it out. It was not locked. I took a deep breath and opened the lid. Inside, nestled on a bed of yellowed velvet, was a stack of letters tied with a faded ribbon, a small, leather-bound diary, and a long, folded document. I picked up the document first. My hands trembled as I unfolded it. It was a legal paper, brittle with age. At the top, in elegant script, were the words, "Last Will and Testament of Margaret Albright," my grandmother. I scanned the document. It was dated 2 years before her death. It was clear and simple. It stated that her entire estate, including the house and all assets, was to be divided equally between her 2 daughters, Eleanor and Carol. It was signed by my grandmother and 2 witnesses. This was it. The original will. Next, I picked up the letters. I untied the ribbon and looked at the top one. It was a letter from Aunt Carol to my grandmother, dated just a few weeks before she died. "Dear Mom," it began, "I do not know why you will not take my calls. Eleanor keeps saying you are too tired to speak to me. I hope you're okay. I am thinking of you every day. I love you." There were dozens of them. Letters full of love and concern. All of them, I now realized, had been hidden by my mother. She had not just lied to her dying mother, she had actively, cruelly isolated her from her other daughter. Finally, I opened the small diary. My grandmother's handwriting was shaky, the entries short and sporadic. The last few pages were chilling. "Eleanor is here all the time now," one entry read. "She is so attentive, but her eyes are cold. She says Carol is angry with me. I do not understand. I miss my little bird." My grandmother had always called Aunt Carol her little bird. Another entry, a few days later. "So many papers to sign. Doctors, nurses. Eleanor says it is all for my own good. My head is so foggy. I cannot think straight." And the last entry, just 2 days before she died. "Eleanor was angry today. She was shouting about the house, about fairness. She gave me another paper to sign. She held my hand to make the signature. I feel so afraid." I closed the diary, my vision blurred with tears. This was the proof. This was the undeniable, ugly truth. My mother had not just manipulated her mother. She had bullied a sick, terrified woman on her deathbed. She had held her hand and forced her to sign away her sister's birthright. I carefully placed everything back in the box. I took out my phone and took pictures of every single page. The will, the letters, the diary entries. I sent them to my email, to Mark's email, and to a cloud storage account. I would not let this proof disappear. I put the box back under the floorboard and replaced the rug. I walked up to my old room, opened my jewelry box, and took out the locket I had used as my excuse. Then I walked out of that house, closing the door on the perfect family I had once believed in. I was no longer just a daughter. I was a witness, and I knew exactly what I had to do. I was not just going to expose my mother. I was going to make sure she finally faced the consequences of what she had done. The first person I called was Aunt Carol. I asked her to meet me at a neutral location, a quiet coffee shop downtown. When she arrived, I did not say a word. I just slid my phone across the table, open to the pictures of the will and the letters. She scrolled through them, her eyes widening. When she got to the pictures of the diary entries, she let out a small, choked sob. She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. "I knew it," she whispered. "I always knew it in my heart, but I never thought there would be proof." "There is," I said, my voice firm, "and we are going to use it." "What do we do?" she asked, looking both hopeful and terrified. "First, you get a lawyer," I said. "A good one. An estate lawyer who specializes in this kind of thing. This is fraud, Aunt Carol. It is undue influence. That second will can be invalidated." She nodded, a new resolve hardening her features. The years of sadness were being replaced by a slow-burning anger. "You're right," she said. "She is not going to get away with this. Not anymore." "Second," I continued, "we need to handle the family. We cannot let Mom control the narrative anymore. We need to call a meeting. Everyone needs to be there. Dad, Grandpa, even Uncle David." Uncle David was my father's brother, a man who had always been firmly in my mother's camp. "He will never believe us," Carol said. "He will when he sees this," I said, tapping my phone. "Facts are stubborn things." We set the plan in motion. Carol contacted a lawyer who was immediately interested in the case after seeing the evidence. He confirmed that we had a very strong claim. Meanwhile, I took on the task of arranging the family meeting. I chose a neutral location, my new apartment, the one Mark and I had just moved into. It was my turf. I called my father first. "Dad, I need you to come to my apartment on Sunday afternoon," I said, my tone leaving no room for argument. "Aunt Carol will be here. Grandpa will be here. We are going to have a family discussion." "Clara, I do not think that is a good idea," he started, his voice full of anxiety. "It will just upset your mother." "Mom is not invited," I said coldly. "This is about what happened with Grandma, and Dad, you need to be there. You need to listen." He was quiet for a long moment. I could hear the internal struggle. Decades of placating his wife versus the sudden, unavoidable confrontation with the truth. "Okay," he finally whispered. "I will be there." I called my grandfather next. Aunt Carol had already told him I had found the box. He sounded stronger than he had in years. "It is time, Clara," he said, his voice firm. "It is long past time." The final call was the hardest. I called my Uncle David. "Clara, what is this about?" he asked, his tone suspicious. "Your mother told me you were siding with Carol and your grandfather." "This is not about sides, Uncle David," I said calmly. "It is about the truth. I have found some new information about my grandmother's will. I think it is important that the whole family sees it. Please, just come and listen." He was hesitant, but his curiosity won out. "Fine," he grumbled. "But if this is just another attempt to smear Eleanor, I am walking out." "That is your choice," I said. The stage was set. Sunday afternoon arrived, gray and overcast, matching the mood. My small apartment felt crowded with the weight of 30 years of secrets. Grandpa Arthur and Aunt Carol arrived first. My grandfather looked me in the eye and gave me a firm nod. He knew this was it. My father arrived next, looking like a man walking to his own execution. He could not look at his sister or his father-in-law. Uncle David was the last to arrive, his face a mask of skepticism. I had them all sit in the living room. I had printed out copies of everything. The original will, the letters, the diary entries. I handed a packet to each of them. "Before anyone says anything," I announced, my voice steady. I want you to read this. This is what I found in a hidden box in Grandma's reading room. This is her will. These are letters from Aunt Carol that she never received. And this is her diary. Silence descended as they began to read. I watched their faces. My grandfather's expression was one of grim vindication. Aunt Carol cried silently, reliving the pain. My father's face grew paler and paler with every page he turned. He looked like he was going to be sick. But the most dramatic transformation was on the face of my Uncle David. He started with a dismissive frown, but as he read, his skepticism melted away, replaced by shock, then confusion, and finally a deep, simmering anger. He looked up from the papers, his eyes wide. He looked at my father. "Robert?" he said, his voice a low growl. "Did you know about this? Did you know she did this?" My father could not speak. He just shook his head, a pathetic, helpless gesture. "He knew," Grandpa Arthur said, his voice like gravel. He did not know about the box, but he knew she was lying. He knew the will was a sham. He was just too much of a coward to stand up to his own wife. "Is that true, Robert?" David demanded, his voice rising. "You let her steal from this family? You let her abuse a dying woman and then you covered it up for 30 years? My father finally broke. He buried his face in his hands and started to sob, his shoulders shaking. "I did not know what to do," he choked out. "She would have destroyed me. She would have destroyed everything." "She destroyed this family anyway," David said, his voice filled with disgust. He threw the papers down on the coffee table. "I cannot believe this," I defended her. "I thought you," he said, pointing at Carol, "were the crazy one." "I am so sorry, Carol. I am so, so sorry." Aunt Carol just nodded, tears in her eyes. It was the apology she had been waiting 3 decades to hear. In that moment, the power in our family shifted. The foundation of my mother's reign, built on lies and upheld by enablers, had crumbled. She had lost her most vocal supporter. She had lost her husband's complicity. She was alone. "What happens now?" my father asked, his voice muffled by his hands. "Carol has hired a lawyer," I said, my voice ringing with authority. "He is going to file a petition to have the fraudulent will thrown out and the original will honored. She is going to get back what was stolen from her. The house, the money, everything." "Eleanor will fight it," my father mumbled. "Let her," Grandpa Arthur said with a grim smile. "Let her try to explain this diary in a court of law. Let her try to explain the hidden letters. Let the whole world see who she really is." The meeting ended. My father and uncle left in a state of shock. Grandpa and Carol stayed for a while, a sense of quiet triumph in the air. The first battle was won, but I knew the war was far from over. My mother was not the type to go down without a fight. And I knew that the final confrontation, the one between mother and daughter, was still to come. She would find out about this meeting. And when she did, she would come for me. I was ready. It did not take long. The next day, my mother showed up at my apartment unannounced. I saw her on the security camera in the lobby and buzzed her up. I was not going to hide. Mark was at work, so I was alone. This was a confrontation that had to be between the two of us. When I opened the door, she did not even say hello. She pushed past me into the apartment, her face a thunderous mask of rage. "How dare you?" she hissed, whirling around to face me. "How dare you hold a secret meeting behind my back to plot against me with my own family?" "It was not a secret meeting, Mom," I said, my voice calm and steady. I closed the door behind her. It was a truth-telling session, something this family has not had in 30 years. "The truth?" she scoffed, her laugh sharp and humorless. "You call those pathetic, senile ramblings in a diary the truth? You call a stack of dusty old letters the truth? Your grandfather is a bitter old man, and your aunt is a failure who wants to blame me for her own mediocre life. I also call a legally executed will the truth," I said, my voice dropping. The one you hid under a floorboard. The one that says Grandma wanted everything split equally. Her face went pale. For a fraction of a second, I saw a flicker of genuine fear in her eyes before it was replaced by an even deeper fury. You went into my house? You went through my things? I went into my grandmother's house, I corrected her. And I found what you stole from her. What you stole from her daughter. I did not steal anything, she shrieked, her voice echoing in the small apartment. I was given what I deserved. I was the one who was there for her. I was the one who sacrificed. Carol was off living her own selfish life. She was not, I shot back, my own anger finally rising to the surface. You made sure of that. You intercepted her letters. You lied to a sick old woman. You told her she was abandoned. You poisoned her mind against her own child. I did what I had to do to protect this family's legacy. You did what you had to do to get rich, I said, my voice dripping with contempt. You wanted the house. You wanted the money. And you were willing to do anything to get it. Even abuse your own mother on her deathbed. She slapped me. The sound cracked through the air. My cheek stung, but I did not flinch. I just stared at her, my eyes cold. Is that all you have left? I asked quietly. Violence? When the lies do not work anymore. The look on my face, the lack of fear, seemed to unnerve her more than anything. Her hand dropped to her side. She took a step back, her chest heaving. You have destroyed this family, Clara, she whispered, her voice trembling with a mixture of rage and self-pity. No, Mom, I said, my voice hard as steel. You destroyed this family 30 years ago. I am just the one who finally turned on the lights. What do you want? She asked, her voice changing, becoming pleading. Money? Is that it? You want me to give Carol money to make this go away? This is not about money anymore, I said. This is about justice. Aunt Carol is taking you to court. She is going to have that fraudulent will overturned. She is going to get her house back, her inheritance, her name. She will not win, my mother snarled. I will hire the best lawyers. I will ruin her. I will ruin you. No, you will not, I said. Because I will be there. I will testify. I will show them the box. I will show them Grandma's diary. Dad will testify. He told me he would. He is done covering for you. Even Uncle David is on our side now. You have no one left, Mom. Your lies have finally caught up to you. The fight seemed to drain out of her. She looked around my small, humble apartment, so different from her grand, perfect house. She looked at me, her daughter who was no longer in awe of her, no longer afraid of her. She looked like a queen who had just watched her kingdom turn to dust. You were always my perfect daughter, she said, her voice barely a whisper. I gave you everything. You gave me a life built on a lie, I said. You tried to make me into a reflection of your own perfection. But I am not you, Mom. I do not want the things you want. I want the truth. And I want peace. And I will never have either of those things with you in my life. It was the final blow. I was not just challenging her past. I was rejecting her future. I was cutting the cord. So that is it? She asked, her voice hollow. You are choosing them over me? I am choosing the truth over you, I said. There is a difference. I walked to the door and opened it. You should go, I said. It was not a request. It was a command. She stood there for a moment, her face a mess of conflicting emotions. I could see the rage, the hurt, the disbelief. She had never lost before. She did not know how. She walked toward the door, her shoulders slumped. As she passed me, she stopped. You will regret this, she said, her voice low and venomous. No, I replied, looking her straight in the eye. I will not. She walked out without another word. I closed the door and leaned against it, my body trembling. The final confrontation was over. The war had been won. but it did not feel like a victory. It felt like a funeral. I had lost my mother, or maybe I had just finally accepted that I never really had one to begin with. The legal battle was long and ugly, just as my mother had promised. She hired a team of expensive lawyers who tried every trick in the book. They tried to paint my grandfather as a senile old man with a vendetta. They tried to portray Aunt Carol as a greedy, opportunistic woman who was trying to extort money from her successful sister. They even tried to paint me as a confused, easily manipulated young woman who had been brainwashed by my bitter relatives. But they could not argue with the evidence. The metal box became the centerpiece of the trial. The original will, the hidden letters, and my grandmother's diary were undeniable. My testimony was clear and unwavering. I recounted finding the box and the contents within. I described my mother's reaction, her threats, her lack of remorse. The most powerful moment of the trial came when my father took the stand. He was called as a witness for my mother's side, but it quickly became clear he was not on her side anymore. Her lawyer asked him if he believed his wife had forged the will. My father looked at my mother, who was sitting at the defendant's table, glaring at him with pure hatred. He took a deep breath and then looked at the judge. "I do not know if she forged it," he said, his voice quiet but steady. "But I know my mother-in-law was not in her right mind when she signed it. I know my wife isolated her from her sister, and I know my wife lied to me and to everyone else for 30 years about what happened in that house. I spent 3 decades living with that lie. I will not do it anymore." It was a devastating blow to her case. After that, the outcome was almost certain. The judge ruled in Aunt Carol's favor. The second will was declared invalid due to undue influence and fraud. The original will was reinstated as the true and final testament of my grandmother. Aunt Carol was legally entitled to half of the estate, retroactive to the date of my grandmother's death. This included half the value of the house plus 30 years of interest and appreciation. My mother was ruined. Financially, she had to sell the house, the monument to her stolen success, to pay Aunt Carol what she was owed. She and my father had to move into a small condominium. Socially, she was disgraced. The story of the trial was whispered about in her social circles. The perfect matriarch was exposed as a common thief. Many of her so-called friends abandoned her. The fallout in the family was profound. My father filed for divorce a few months after the trial ended. He told me he just could not live with her anymore, could not look at her without seeing the cruelty she was capable of. He started rebuilding his relationship with his brother, Uncle David, and with Aunt Carol. He was a quieter, sadder man, but he seemed more at peace than I had ever seen him. Aunt Carol used her inheritance to buy a small cottage by the sea, a place she had always dreamed of. She finally had the financial security my mother had stolen from her. She and I became closer than ever, bonded by the truth we had fought for. My grandfather, Arthur, lived long enough to see his daughter vindicated. He passed away peacefully in his sleep a year after the trial. At his funeral, my mother did not show up. It was a small, quiet service filled only with the people who had truly loved him. It felt more honest that way. As for me and Mark, we built our own life, far from the wreckage of my childhood. We bought a small house with a garden. We focused on building a family based on honesty and trust, the very things my mother had despised. I never spoke to her again. She tried to reach out a few times, sending letters filled with blame and self-pity, but I returned them unopened. There was nothing left to say. Sometimes I think about that metal box, hidden under the floorboards for all those years. It was a time capsule of a crime, a container of truth waiting for someone to find it. My mother spent her life building a kingdom on lies. She created a perfect world that was beautiful on the outside but rotten to the core. I was not the one who destroyed it. I was just the one who finally opened the door and let the light in. The rot had been there all along. My mother finally learned what it feels like to have everything you value turn to dust. And I learned that sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for your family is to force them to face the truth no matter how much it hurts. It is the only way to truly be free.